So, welcome everyone. We are about to launch into a conversation all about abundance with several teachers from within meditation. And before we get into all of the talking, we're going to settle in with a little bit of meditation. And so, Desiree, you want to go ahead and lead us in that?
Sure. Thanks, Hannah. So go ahead and close your eyes wherever you are, or keep walking if you are walking. And just find a comfortable position, upright or relaxed. And take a moment to settle into your body, letting go of some of the busyness of the day. Taking a moment to notice what's here. Noticing the weight of your body on the chair, the touch of your feet against the floor, any sensations on the surface of your skin. Any sounds inside the room or outside the room. Awakening your senses to everything that's here in this moment. If you find any lingering thoughts from work, from the day, entering into your mind, not trying to get rid of them, just tuning in to the sensations of the present moment as a grounding force. And throughout this talk, if you find your mind pulling you away, you can always come back to sound, body sensations, the breath to bring you back. And we'll just take 3 deep breaths together. Inhaling in to the count of 5, holding at the top, and exhaling out through the mouth to the count of 7. So starting together, inhaling in, holding, and exhaling out, releasing, inhaling in, holding, and exhaling out, releasing. And one more time, inhaling in, holding, and exhaling everything out, letting go and releasing. Letting your breath return to normal. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes.
Thank you, Desiree. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Let's begin by introducing ourselves. Maybe each of us can share a little bit about who you are, and how you're associated with within, and what your anything you'd like to share about yourself before we begin. You want to start us off, Desiree?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm a
Go
teacher
ahead.
at meditation, and in addition to that, I also do coaching on the side. And I recently started a full-time job as an organizational effectiveness and culture change leader at Kaiser Permanente. So it's really nice to be here with all of you today. I will pass it to Herky.
Hi, good evening. My name is Herky, and I'm a teacher again at Within Meditation. I also have a 9-to-5 or corporate job not a corporate job, but I work as a program manager at CareerLink, and I am also a life coach. So I help people that are struggling with anything ranging from self-worth to anxiety to just wanting to, do something with their life, have a goal. So I just help with that. I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids, 10, 14, and 18. So I am busy, especially in the summertime, and meditation is my go-to for everything. Yeah, I'll pass it to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Herky. I'm Hannah Knapp. I'm the co-founder of Within Meditation, and I'm also a teacher there. And I also have another role that I play in the world. I'm the COO of a nonprofit called Leaders in Tech. We help startup founders develop emotional intelligence, especially with regard to their interpersonal dynamics, so they can be better leaders, especially when their companies are little, and grow amazing cultures as they grow. And I'm also a mom. So I've got 2 kids, and yes, the summers are very full, very, very full of a lot of fun and chaos. So that's where I'm coming from right now. Into this conversation about abundance. As this is one of my favorite topics, I'm so delighted to have both of you here to talk about it today, Desiree and Herky. Let's start by just defining what we mean when we talk about abundance, and specifically about having an abundance mindset. What does that mean? Just
So
jump
I
in.
can go. I would like to define with Eckhart Tolle's quote: acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. And I think that speaks volume about abundance is not only about acquiring, it's about recognizing what is already present. And again, when we speak of abundance, a lot of the times people relate to wealth, which could be a part of abundance, but abundance of time, of resources, of even the dieting culture, of just abundance around the mindset around there is enough for everybody versus having a lack or scarcity mindset.
I love all of that, Herky, and my definition is similar. It's the idea that what you have is enough. So knowing that what you have in this moment is what you need. And I think the challenge of that is nothing about society encourages that mindset, right? So society's like, you don't have enough money, you need this, you need that. And I think it's up to us to sort of understand for ourselves, like, what actually is enough? Like, what is enough for me individually? And often what we have is what we're meant to have at that moment. And so I like this idea of not taking external markers of what is enough, but judging for yourself and really questioning like what you need and what you need in this moment.
Yes, and yes, to all of that. What's coming up for me as you're both defining this mindset is how much it is a conscious choice we need to make to be in that mindset. Because as you were saying, Desiree, like, we're not only are a lot of forces from outside us pushing us towards thinking about what we don't have, but also we're wired for that. Like, evolutionarily, like, what we look for is what's wrong, what do I need to fix, what's going to go wrong, all of those things, because it's survival. And what is so amazing to me about shifting into an abundance mindset is that you taking yourself out of that survival mode and into living fully in what is, like letting go of the need to be protecting and grasping so you can stay alive, and instead trusting I am alive. Like, I can trust enough of the foundation that I've got going on that I can open and experience what's here instead of always looking for what isn't here. So that's what comes up for me when I think about abundance. And I would love to follow up on that, to ask the two of you, what do you think? We've already started talking a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on what gets in the way of us experiencing abundance, and maybe what gets in the way And what do you see as some ways of identifying and moving past that?
Yeah, a little of that you already touched, Hannah, on the survival. So when we're not self-aware, when we don't know the content of our thoughts that are playing out from our programmed conditioning, how we grew up, what kind of belief systems were we raised in, who all influenced us, and what have we adapted to, and sometimes trauma or even something that has a bad experience could shape how we perceive things. So I feel a lot of it is recognizing where that is, because many times I feel when people hear of abundance mindset, who wouldn't want to feel abundant all the time, right? But these are the things that come in the way. And it's almost like teaching a little child, gradually teaching your mind to look at, like you said, it's always scanning for, survival, what's wrong. So almost teaching it what's right, what is okay to, what is safe, where can we go from here, where can I question my own thoughts, being fearless about questioning your thoughts versus protecting that identity of, I only believe in this and I cannot go beyond, is a huge area of growth. And when we are willing to follow that discomfort a little bit of, so let's say you're going for a job interview and your constant thoughts are it's too difficult, there are no jobs, the economy is collapsing. And if it can, and this feed that your mind is producing, the news feed may be coming from what you have read, what you're hearing people talk, you may have had a bitter experience, or a lot of and it could be a mix of thoughts too. But when you're willing to lean into, I wonder, at least that space, a space of neutrality, because sometimes you can't jump from, one end to the other. And then you're willing to question your own narrative. That is an area where, expansion happens. And accessing abundance at times when you're already feeling a little uplifted, maybe, you're just spend time connecting with your loved one or being in nature or somewhere where your heart is open and you're very receptive. Those are the times that you also strengthen that and recognize that you want to be in this space, that it feels good to be in this space, and just savoring those moments too. So.
I love so much of what you said, Herky. I really like what you said about shifting to at least a neutral mindset. So when you're seeing all these posts about, the economy, it's not, you don't have to say, I know I'm going to get a job for sure, but just at least get out of the, I'm not going to get a job. So just shifting to the neutral, I think, is such an interesting practice. Hannah, to your original question about what gets in the way, I think Herky mentioned some of that. So much of our conditioning, maybe the way we were raised or grew up, maybe specific trauma that we had, maybe where we are and who we're around can get in the way of that. And I might share my personal experience with struggling with the abundance mindset. Some of you know, over the last year, 2 years, I had left my full-time job to start my own coaching practice. And I really struggled with what's enough money. And I had some people telling me it's all mindset, right? Like it's a mindset thing. You have enough, you have to have this abundance mindset. And other people saying like, no, it's, there are cold hard facts. And I think that the truth lies in the middle, right? Because there actually is no, if you talk to a financial advisor, they're not going to say, this is the number you need to have, right? Where you'll be okay, because no one knows that number. And also it's not just having a mindset. Like sometimes it really is like you need to have a baseline amount. And so this is where discernment comes in for me. It's being able to use your own wisdom to see, okay, what is the situation? Where can I stretch my mindset? And where am I buying into some of the fear that society or conditioning is encouraging in me? So I think like so much of meditation is a wisdom practice. And this is where it comes in, where there aren't clear answers, right? No one can tell you, and you have to sort of decide for yourself, like, is this a place where it's mindset or it's reality that is determining the situation? I think what helps, actually, I don't know, was this part of your question? What helps get out of? Yeah. I think what helps get out of that, besides the wisdom piece of it, is using your own experience to know that what you have is enough. So when I have a difficult moment, when I'm in that difficult moment, it feels awful, right? And when I get out of that difficult moment, I'm out of it, I'm thinking about something else. But we never think about, wow, like that was a really difficult moment and I survived it. And so when we're having difficult times, where the abundance mindset can come in is the knowledge that we've survived really, really difficult moments and we will survive whatever this is. So if we think that we're missing something in our life, just the sheer knowledge that we've done difficult things, I think can be really helpful. That we've done difficult things, and even in that difficulty, we had a lot of amazing things on our side, whether it was family or friends or health or supportive practices. So I think for me, it's the wisdom and it's the past experiential wisdom, right? Like what we've experienced and know to be true, that even in difficult moments, it's not complete scarcity. There is abundance.
Yes, yes. I love all of that. And what's coming up for me is that sometimes we think that not being in the scarcity mindset, right? Like not giving into the fear, that somehow it will make us passive. That somehow like the reason we have to buy into that fear or whatever is because it's going to galvanize us to do something. And sometimes it does, like that does happen. But what I found so fascinating about leaning into an abundance mindset is that often it can happen that when I do open myself to trusting, either like you said, like that I've gotten through this before or something similar, trusting my own experience or just trusting that things will work out, trusting the moment, that often that spaciousness allows for exactly the kind of creativity that you need in order to move out of that situation. Like if I'm gripping and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. No, I'm not going to figure out how to get through this, right? Like, or I am, but it's not going to be a choice that's going to be very, take me in the ultimate direction that I want. Maybe I'll just solve it for the moment. And so sometimes it's helpful for me to remind myself of that too, that, I'm so in my head and my head wants to figure it out. And when I can let that go and open myself to trust that I can figure this out, or it will be figured out for me somehow, that's when there's enough space for the creativity to come through, to find a way forward. Yeah, which is a little surprising.
I agree. I so agree about giving space, because I think the mind so desperately wants to solve things. And when it gets into that mode, it's really a scarcity mode. Like the solving, it needs to be worked out now. I think about so many times in my life when I told myself, okay, I have to solve it now. And when I let go is when it actually got solved. And I know if someone's in something right now, they're like, okay, sure. But it has happened that way, that when we let go, I think that just frees up a lot of our mental resources to not be grasping and to instead be open to possibility.
Yeah. And to notice the opportunities that appear, because we don't have that tunnel vision anymore where we're looking for it to be this specific way. Then we can open to the possibility that another avenue that might not be the one we thought it was is the one that's going to take us out of that place.
Agree.
For sure. And I think the key element being trust, like you said. So trust is the space that holds it. This reminds me of this wanting, having, and being. So just moving from a lot of the wanting comes from the mind, the ego, like, it has to happen and it has to happen right now. We have to figure it out this second. And then just shifting that, allowing that spaciousness. And that spaciousness is not always very comfortable when you're allowing. But I think the more you do, the more accepting you are, the easier it becomes. And, more just witnessing that this is coming through. I can see even, moving into the body and seeing how opening up that space for that intensity of the emotion that's coming through at that time, instead of engaging and feeding the fuel of, of whatever thoughts are coming through. Like I said, one is you could, question, but the other is I feel like I do my own experimentation too. And I've seen that when there's like the intensity is too high, At that time, it is good to have a release of that versus ignoring or just witnessing. And that release could come from whether it's journaling, brain dumping, and just call it a thought storm. Let it pour, and maybe something deep is underlying and it just needs a release. It could also be like a good listening ear, but here you being your own good listener to yourself, and it falls through. And then there is it allows for the intensity of the emotion. Wow, my chest feels tight. There's something in my belly, or my neck is constricted, or something like that. And then just dropping into that. And when you start feeling that, I have done this like maybe in the middle of a very busy meeting or something, and I can feel the tightness coming through. But the more I have made friends with the intelligence of the body, the easier it is for me to not fake anything and to see, oh, there is something coming up. And when I drop into that space, often it opens and dissolves, and and I'm not looking for it to dissolve, but just all those things also I feel like help, I'm accessing that.
I really like the idea of giving airspace to the difficult emotions and the difficult thoughts, right? So instead of saying, how do I shift my mindset to an abundance mindset, just like letting it air out can be really helpful. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, Herky, because one thing we were discussing at work this week was a tactic or a framework that one of the leaders uses called negative brainstorming. And she's a nursing chief executive, and she talked about sometimes there are so many things that are wrong that when you want to start an initiative, all people can think about is all the reasons why it won't go right. And so this negative brainstorming is you allow everyone, and there's no crosstalk, so people aren't commenting on other people's, but you allow everyone to voice their concerns and the probability and the impact, and then move on. And then once everyone's done that, it's like, okay, like there's this like collective sigh, really, like we've acknowledged it. It's not like we're ignoring it, and we're not also spending an hour on it. Like people get to talk about it. And now, knowing the constraints, what do we want to focus on? And so I think that's, and what you said reminded me of that. It's like sometimes you just need to give airspace to the negativity to then be able to have more creative solutions or more openness or more dissolution, let's say, in your body.
I love that. Maybe use that negative brainstorm. Yeah, and I have also seen, because sometimes the pressure can be a tremendous pressure to follow the, I'm not in abundance mindset, and especially in the coaching world too. You're in lack, you're not in abundance, and you have to shift, and you cannot like fight what's coming through, in high speed. So I think, yeah, that's a good strategy for a team too.
Yes, one of the things that's coming up for me as we're talking about that is that it's also about the intention that you're holding when you're giving that space to the negativity. Because if you're holding that space with the intention of allowing a shift to happen, or allowing, like in the group discussion that you were describing, Desiree, you're having that negative brainstorm, knowing that the goal is to then move to what can we do. And that's so different from going into a negative spiral about what's not working, where all you do is keep reinforcing for yourself over and over again why something can't work, or why it's awful, or why, and the difference, one of the differences is having that awareness of, oh, I can see that I'm having this negative reaction. I need to feel it fully, explore it, and then I can make a choice how to shift out of it. And that kind of awareness, we play in that space a lot as meditation teachers, but it's not something that everyone thinks to have. It's not something that everyone thinks to do, is to actually realize, oh, I can do that. I can choose what direction I'm putting my energy. And so taking time to cultivate that, particularly, I know for me personally, that's where the meditation practice came in and started from. For me, it was trying to figure out how to live well with all of these thoughts and all of these emotions that come up, and just giving myself actual chunks of time where all I'm doing is observing what is going on in my crazy mind. Makes it easier to then, as I'm walking through life, identify when my thoughts are starting to carry me in a particular direction and be able to take that step back and observe and feel, so that I can move in a different direction if I choose.
And I think there's a subtle art to when, like, how much airspace do you give and how much do you then shift? Like what you were saying, like the intention matters. I remember early on, before my meditation practice, or even in the early years of my meditation practice, I was the venter. I loved calling and venting and talking about what's going on and processing that way, because I think I was also encouraged in therapy to process that way. And I think a certain amount of that is okay, but you need to decide for yourself, when have you vented and when is it time to move on? And I don't think you should go straight from not venting and moving on. So it's, again, this is where wisdom and discernment comes in. Like, only you know, from being super mindful and going through this situation by situation, when have you let out the negative brainstorm, so to speak, and when are you ready to start thinking differently? And it can't be rushed. That's what I've noticed. Someone can't rush it for you. You can't try to move faster than you're ready. And so I think part of it is like compassion for yourself when you are in that scarcity mindset of like, you're not choosing to be in the scarcity mindset. There are a lot of forces that are causing you to be in that mindset. Like, give yourself a hug, a break that you're in that mindset, and know that you will move through it.
Yeah. And I think discernment, like you're saying, in terms of when to not go into that rumination and just be in that, spiral, and when to see, access the other side too. But I feel like meditation is one of the best gifts in that we have self-awareness. It's almost like you have a package that comes to you, and all your life you thought that this is whatever is the content of this package is you. And now meditation gives you the option to see that it is there. It is not you. You can observe it. You can choose the contents. And the more often you do it, the more you trust that next time it's arriving in full speed, you know that you don't need to identify with every little thing that's come your way. So
yeah I like that a lot. Like, meditation is the gift that lets you realize you are not the thoughts. You are not this package of thoughts. And it's okay to let them go when you're ready to.
Yes, this should be the first lesson they teach you in school.
Yes, and they don't. And I think that that's one of the things that's such a challenging part of this journey of adulting is either figuring that out or not figuring that out, and realize and just being tossed about by all of these crazy emotions. And one of the things that that I wanted to ask the two of you about, sort of along those lines, is I love how we've been talking about how we don't want to sort of paper over what's not good in order to sort of fake our way into an abundance mindset too fast before we're ready for it. And yet at the same time, we both of you mentioned as well, like how it can be so helpful to look for the good and look for the things that are already working well, or the positives of whatever situation you're in. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about what kinds of, if there's specific ideas or practices you have for cultivating that sense of abundance in your life. I would love to hear any thoughts you have about those kinds of practices too.
Number one being, if I can go first, number one being gratitude. So just having that sense of recognizing, and whether that gratitude is mental or written, it helps to, of course, reinforce and have some kind of gratitude journal. But if you don't, just recognizing what all is there, because it's very easy to not acknowledge what is here until it's taken away sometimes. And starting from the littlest to the biggest things that you're thankful for. Sometimes just being in open space, looking at the clouds, looking at the stars, being with the earth, touching the grass, and just being so intimate with how abundant nature is and how much it has to teach us. And then equally, I was sitting during my lunch break and watching these trees, and there was this bare tree and all the others green. And I was like, how abundant is everything, including the tree with no leaves and the tree that's almost rotting, because that is what we need to recognize, that, you know, just the impermanence and the things that are present in life are so, we're so used to how they should be without ever questioning, or, you know, just seeing the beauty of so-called imperfection. And hence we are so hostile towards, you know, our self-talk is so always mostly negative about how we are doing, how we are performing, and the pressure. So just being in that space, and also I feel like it helps to be, first of all, to be self-aware of, you know, what is your mindset, what are you seeing and not seeing, being with the people who support and uplift you more. And I know it's not always a choice, but some kind of connection also helps. Those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, I think for me there are a few things. I think one is boundaries, which we tend to think of in terms of boundaries with people, other people or with work. And I like boundaries with thoughts. So when we have certain kinds of thoughts, do we give them like free rent in our mind the whole day forever? One thing that I started doing was putting thinking time, like half an hour for when I want to do all the negative, like catastrophizing thinking. It's during that time, and it's interesting. It never takes 30 minutes, but you give yourself that dedicated time versus letting it take over the entire day. So boundaries with my thoughts and the kinds of thoughts that I let take over my mind. The second one is little joys. So, and I got to practice with this year when my family was going through a lot and everything felt heavy. And I actually was speaking to another meditation practitioner, and she told me, you know, when things are crazy and everything feels like it's not going well, is there anything in that moment that does feel good? And I thought about, well, you know, when I wake up, like, and my sheets are nice and warm and comfortable, I love that feeling. Just like lean into that, like find those micro joys. And so that's what I would say to anyone going through a difficult time or a time where there's a scarcity mindset, is even within the scarcity mindset, what are the little joys that are still there? Like having your morning coffee, having that piece of chocolate, going for a walk, like sitting in a patch of sun, you know, like putting on the heat in San Francisco and not caring about the bill because you want to feel like it's summer. So, you know, the little joys that you let yourself indulge in that show you like, wow, there is so much here, even when you're missing things. And I think the last piece is community or Sangha, right? It's having people who reinforce the way that you're trying to see the world versus maybe the traditional way or maybe the scarce way. And I think like, for me, what's really helped, and something personal I'll share, is I've never wanted kids, even though I love kids. And that's super taboo in my Persian Jewish upbringing, and even taboo when I tell most people, oh, you'll never experience the love of a child, you'll never experience this and that. And it gets me into this scarcity mode until I met other people who, you know, are child free and have a lot of love, and who taught me, you know, you can find that love within you today. You don't need a child to manifest it. And so I think finding that community of people who help you think differently, and again, that mindset of you don't need something to give you a state, you can cultivate that state for yourself. And so, yeah, community, boundaries with your thoughts, and little joys are what helps me.
Oh, I love all of these practices. And part of what I'm noticing as we're talking about them is how interrelated gratitude and that sense of abundance are. Like when we're noticing the little joys, or we're pausing to, I love the feet being warm in the morning. Now I'm thinking about that when we pause to let that in, we remind ourselves of our capacity for joy, our capacity to feel held by the universe, to feel that sense of trust that is at the heart of feeling abundant, rather than the clinging and the fear that comes with scarcity. And I love the idea of investing energy in those moments, whether it's through gratitude or just through savoring, like with the chocolate, you know, like that we skip over those moments so often, and I think we don't realize that they're actually the way into that happiness that we're seeking in so many other ways, is just to notice those things and be in them as they are happening. And of course, that's easier said than done a lot of the time, which is why we have to say it. We have to keep talking about it, because that's not, usually we're just, okay, what's next?
And sometimes we don't let ourselves savor, right? Like if we're in a scarce mindset, we might eat, but we might eat with a guilty way and just to cover up emotions. And so I like the idea of, if you're going to have a chocolate, like sometimes when I'm having a piece of chocolate, I put on like one of those mindful chocolate eating meditations. Like I need to hear it, and I can, and like, you're not multitasking, and let yourself really savor that. If you're going to have the chocolate, instead of feeling guilty, like really take 6 minutes savoring that piece of chocolate.
Yes, I love that. Along those lines, I'm curious about when we are, so if we take as our premise that what we want to go for is living in that space of feeling abundant more than we are today. Like, let's say that that's the challenge that we're taking on, is, okay, given that I've got all of these pressures on me that are trying to get me not to, to be in scarcity and so forth, and I'm saying, no, I'm going to do what I can to live more in that place of abundance. What's my question here? What does it feel? How do you know when you're successfully putting yourself into that space of abundance? What does it feel like and look like? Any suggestions for how to know when you're in that space versus in the scarcity space?
An interesting question. From personal experience, it feels like I can feel like joy springing from within for no particular reason. There's a non-outcome based. Yes, I could be excited, but that's feels a little different. Being excited over so-called achieving something feels very different from feeling very fulfilled, content, abundant within. It's more like a feeling that the question is interesting on how you know. And it's just like, personally, I know that I'm in that space because it feels like I need nothing else in this moment. And just it's more like a full body, just feeling of wow, that feeling of awe, or again, like it's similar to you being first time like seeing a spectacular scenery or holding a baby or a mountaintop or something, and you're just mesmerized by the whole thing. And sometimes that could may not have always happened for big events. Sometimes in some capacity it can feel you can feel those in very mundane day-to-day life, that you can tap into that. And I think for me, meditation does help a lot, but I don't want to say that it's only people who meditate can access that or something like that. But I feel like it just brings me to a space where I'm not so caught up in my own mind, but I have this openness to see, wow, this is life, or like it feels great, that type of thing.
That almost sounds like a spiritual experience, the way that you go through it. Mine's not as glamorous, but maybe it can fill out the other side of it, which is sometimes it doesn't feel that good when you're even when you're moving from scarcity to abundance. And I'm gonna do a food metaphor again. So it's, sometimes when you're hungry, you need food, so go eat food. And so like if you're in scarcity mode and you need more income to be able to afford to live, or there's something that you need to do it, is what I would say. But if it is mindset caused, like it is conditioning or it's society. So sometimes you want to eat food and it's not because you're hungry. It's like your tongue, your mouth wants like interesting food. And that's when you have to like really come back to your stomach. Like, am I actually hungry? Like, do I really need more food, or is that am I trying to comfort myself in some way? And so I would bring this back to the scarcity mindset. When you're moving to abundance, it's this feeling of this is uncomfortable. I still know that like there's this thing that I want, but I also know that I want it, I don't need it. And what I have right now is enough, I'm full. So playing around with that, it's like, it won't always feel great. Like you still might want that thing, but you're not grasping as much, and you're not going to try to like go get it now. If especially if it's not available, you're like, I have what I need right now. I'm full. And if I needed more food, I would get food. But right now I don't really need more food. It's more psychological. I hope that made sense. I made that analogy up on the spot, but I feel like it's apt.
Well, and it comes back to what you were talking about earlier about discernment, that like at the root of it, it's being able to look at whatever you're experiencing and the impulses that you're having, and ask yourself, where is this coming from, and is it true? Is it necessary? So that you can make the choice that is appropriate for the moment, is really what I'm hearing in what you're describing.
Yeah, because I want, like, sometimes the need is true. Like, not all scarcity mindset is in your head. Like, you might need something. And I just don't want people to feel like it's all mindset, because I've been in the situation where people have told me that. So like trusting yourself to know the difference. Like, what is mindset versus what is reality? And then how do you act based off of that?
Yes. And one of the things that I notice when I'm trying to discern there is that when I know that I'm moving into abundance, when I am moving into trust, and being able to, whether it's trusting myself, like I will know what to do in that situation. I don't need to try to spin out 16 scenarios before I walk into it. Like I can just trust based on my experience that I will be able to walk in and deal with whatever it is, right? Or it's trusting that I'm not sure how I'm going to get from A to B, but I'm going to trust that it will happen. And that's been a huge part for me of shifting into abundance, is recognizing when my thoughts are taking me in a direction that is trying to figure it out and problem solve, like we were talking about earlier in the conversation. And when I'm able to trust, to shift into trust. But there is a difference, sort of to the point of what you were just saying, between trusting and being in denial. And saying like, okay, well, I don't know how to get from A to B, but I'm just gonna give up, right? Or whatever. Or like, I'm not gonna look at it because I can't figure out how to get from A to B. It feels different for me because I've done both. It feels different when I'm just ignoring something that actually really does need a solution, and when I'm consciously trusting that I'm going to figure it out and creating the space for that creativity to arise, or for the opportunities to arise, or for me just to make a connection I haven't made yet, and then taking action. Because so often I think there can be this, I should say, I've certainly heard, people talk about, well, if you like with law of attraction stuff, right? Like, well, if you just put out the energy of what you want, then you'll get it back to you. And I love that idea. I am fascinated by that idea. And there's a really important step in there that some teachers do talk about, which I appreciate, which is it's not just about putting the energy out there, which is about being in the abundance mindset. It's also about then taking action as opportunities arise to further yourself in the direction that you want to go. And when I'm able to remember that and do that, it's that much more exciting to me, because then it's not just about, it is about surrender in many ways, surrendering to, okay, well, we'll see what happens, and I'm trusting that it's going to work out. But it's also about empowering myself to take action, to take myself in the direction that I want to go into.
And I think just this, sorry, Herky, go for it.
No, go ahead.
Just one thing about trust, and now you both can probably see that I have more of a pessimistic mindset than either of you. For me, when I was taking this job and so many people said, wow, that commute is awful, it's going to break you. I didn't trust that things would work out. But I think, and looking back, I think that would have been a hard thing for me to do. But I think I could have trusted that I don't know what will happen, because so many things change that I couldn't have experienced. So I think for the pessimist, the pessimists who are listening to this, you don't always have to trust that it will work out, but maybe trust that you really don't know what's going to happen when you make that leap. Like, we think we can predict the future, and we are historically very bad at that. And so because we don't know, there's, yes, a chance that it might be as bad as you think. There's also a chance that it'll be neutral, and another chance that it'll be even better than you thought. So this idea of like, you don't have to think that's going to be great, but just know that you don't know. And maybe that's better than your pessimistic mindset baseline.
Yeah, and this, like, trusting the unknown doesn't come easy, but I feel like if you take stock of your life and see how many things you had planned from childhood till now and how many worked out as per your plan, is a good way to see how much of it. And that's not to negate action and, you know, what we need to do. Like you were saying, Hannah, it shouldn't become a bypassing of or avoiding the emotion just because you want to not deal with it, so you give it another fancy term to get away with. And I think as meditators, I think we're constantly being courageous enough to take stock of how we are, our internal state is operating. We don't need to prove to anyone on the outside, but because the more heightened self-awareness you have, the more you are able to trust your intuition and also discern, like, oh, am I just trying to, you know, just bypass this and not willing to experience or the action that it requires. And then one other aspect of abundant is mostly seen as like a plus or getting, but it, like I said, it's also allowing and giving. There's a lot of abundance in giving, and it could be in a very small, gentle way. It could be a kind smile, making someone's day, complimenting, giving someone a genuine compliment, tipping somebody, and, you know, just that feeling without expecting any outcome. Just is so you can tap into that feeling of abundance even when there is flow outward and, you know, in that energy. So yeah, those are also some good ways to experiment with abundance.
Yeah, and that's always available, right? Like, be able, like, treating people with kindness, that extra tip or that extra smile or a handwritten note. It does,
Right.
like, it's, you know, it's just always there.
Yeah, what flows outward also flows inward. So yeah.
I have one last question for the two of you, and I'm just curious if you have encountered this as meditation teachers who know other meditation teachers as well, and are just sort of focused on that element of life, spirituality, if you will. In your experience, is there a conflict between wanting abundance, being in abundance, and cultivating spirituality? Or do you think that they can coexist? And in particular, maybe not as so much the abundance that we've been talking about a lot in this conversation, but in particular, wealth and money. And I would just love to hear if you have had any experiences with that in your own lives or with other teachers that you've been with around that topic.
I know personally I have struggled with it. Just growing up, especially things like meditation are, you know, are very accessible in India and freely available. And trying to offer something in that space as a paid teaching was a huge area of conflict for me. And I saw, you know, sometimes there are people who will pull you down on that too. But I feel like money, and then that has shifted, and it's really feels so well aligned right now that money is also energy. What meaning, how you define money, how you acquire it, what is your intent, how you use it are far more important than how much is the dollar amount. And at the end of the day, if you know you are trying to live there is no shame in living a good life, you know, and a good life that supports you. For example, for me, it's me, my children, my family, also sharing it with others, then why not? It should, in fact, money should go in the hands of the people who are going to use it wisely. So there should be there is no glory in poverty, or just saying that a person should not be charging or should not be having too much wealth, or because it really depends. A millionaire could feel a lot of scarcity, and a person with $100 could be, very joyful around the world to themselves and others. So I no longer, I just see what is right and true in my life and what feels the right thing to do. So, yeah.
I think Herky said it perfectly. I mean, for me personally, I've never been the type who wants to accumulate lots and lots of wealth. And so, I haven't struggled with that, but I also have noticed where I used to judge, right? When we don't know someone's story. So recently there was someone in one of my coaching groups who really wanted to have a successful exit. He wanted X millions of dollars. And I found myself judging until I found out his story, which is his sister, when she was delivering, her son was in critical condition, and this hospital went out of their way to save the son's life. And so he made a commitment then to give X millions of dollars to that hospital. And so he really wanted to have a successful exit to be able to do that. Now, he hadn't volunteered that information. If I hadn't digged in, I wouldn't have found that out. So we really never know people's motives, and it can be dangerous to judge. I think, like Herky said, it's what is, when you think about money, what are you using it for? What's the intention behind it? What's the emotional valence behind it? There's so much that goes into it that's very personal, and that can be charitable or not. And so I think that's for each individual to think about, what is the amount that I want, or that could contribute to other people's wellness, versus is just for. And actually, I don't even want to judge. I think people can have their own mindsets around money. It's more what works for you.
Thank you both for those insights. And I would just add that one of the things that I've been very curious about cultivating myself, as someone who I run a business, that what we do is we offer meditation classes. Right? We offer meditation classes to the public and to companies. And so this question of charging for what we do, like you were saying, Herky, definitely, and comes up a lot. But I started out, when I first started this business, with a very clear conviction of no, the teachers should be paid and we should charge people for what we do. And I realized that it was coming from a background that I have, as before my life before I started within was I was an actor for many years, and actors are always underpaid for what they do. And I was coming from that, in a way, from that place of scarcity. It's I'm going to right that wrong by making sure that everybody gets paid. And it's been very interesting for me to zoom out a bit and see that that's where the motivation initially came from. And when I can open myself to that the desire to have people well compensated for their time doesn't necessarily have to come out anymore from a judgment about how I was treated in the past, or how other people I knew were treated in the past. Now I can release that and allow it to just be about thank you. This is, you are giving of yourself, and money, like you said, Herky, is an energy exchange, and I want to thank you for everything that you've brought to this. And so, as you both were saying in different ways, money is so charged for us culturally, probably for every culture, I don't know, but certainly in this culture, it's very charged. And exploring the relationship that I personally have with money has been a big part of my journey around abundance, and my willingness to be real about the need for money, the desire for money, and what it can do when I have it in my hands, what I can do with it, the power that it creates. So that's an ongoing exploration for me in this arena of abundance. Before we're very close to the end of our time, but I would love to ask each of you to just, if there's any last thought that you wanted to share about abundance, and then also share how people can hear more from you through meditation classes or other things you do.
Okay. So final thoughts, I just want to let people know that abundance is accessible. Open up your hearts and access it. It doesn't have to be defined by anyone else. Define your own abundance. Look at the goodness in your life and train your mind to keep going there. Don't force, don't push, don't deny, but do open up and train your mind to look that way too. Just wear, experiment with different glasses and see how that feels. As far as classes go, so I have taken a little bit of summer break, but I will be back. I teach on Sundays and Mondays. Some Sundays, there are different alternate Sundays at noon Eastern, and on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern.
All right. I think mine is something that someone told me that really helped me when I was in a scarcity mindset is to look at this moment. What's wrong with this moment? Like often when you're craving something, you're implying that there's something wrong with this moment, and it can be so automatic. And so when you're in that scarcity mindset, what's wrong with this moment? Because all we have is moment to moment. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 minutes, right? So just seeing the abundance that's in this very moment has been really helpful for me. And I will be coming back to Within with a new class time starting end of August. Don't know the exact date, but maybe Hannah does. And it's at noon Pacific on Mondays. So I'm really excited for that.
Thanks, Desiree and Herky. And I will just add that one of the tools that I have found most helpful for helping myself create new pathways in my mind around abundance are affirmations. I love affirmations. They can get a bad rap. They can, because they can feel like you're going into that denial space, right? But what I love about really affirmations that really resonate with you or with me in this case is that they can remind yourself that a different way of thinking is possible. And so I would encourage you to experiment with finding affirmations you love and putting them up on Post-its around you or repeating them to yourself in meditation, but letting that help you cultivate that mindset that you want, remind you of how. And I teach on Monday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, and I would love to have you in class with me. So thank you all for being here for this conversation. It was so great to explore this territory with you. And I hope we'll all get to talk again on another topic soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.